Welcome, student, to this explainer on Exodus chapter 36. I am so glad you joined me for this study today. Now, you might be wondering, why does a passage detailing ancient construction parameters matter so deeply to our walk today? Well, it's because within these ancient, incredibly specific blueprints, we discover the very nature of God's provision. Today, we're establishing our focus on a profound structural reality. We're going to see exactly how grace and structured generosity transform into tangible infrastructure under centralized divine authority. As you'll see, a community functioning under new divine parameters responds with such overwhelming generosity that it literally requires an administrative halt. It is an absolutely brilliant picture of provision, obedience, and the precise architecture of holy worship. Let's dive in.
Before we begin our verse-by-verse exegesis, we absolutely must establish our dispensational context. Now, observe how this grounds our theology. We are operating strictly within the dispensation of the law. As careful students of the Word, you know we must read Exodus 36 through a literal, grammatical, and historical framework. This means we are observing God's specific physical operational parameters for the nation of Israel during this precise era, long before the dispensation of grace. The rules of engagement with a holy God here are given specifically to a chosen physical nation. Understanding this framework is absolutely crucial. It protects us from incorrectly applying historical, national mandates to the modern church era. Here is the structural syllabus for our systematic study of the text today. We'll cover the historical and cultural background, walk through the biblical narrative, explore the theological significance, apply some spiritual lessons, and finally draw to our conclusion. Let us examine the historical and cultural background. It's vital to understand the environment in which this construction occurred because the contrast is staggering. Think about ancient infrastructure projects in places like Egypt and Canaan. They were built solely to advertise a regional power's might, right? They utilized oppressive, compulsory service, heavy labor quotas, and ceaseless industry, all just to house static, silent idols. But observe Israel's tabernacle. What kind of God requests voluntary gifts over forced labor? The God of Israel. His authorized sanctuary advances quietly under strict Sabbath parameters and entirely voluntary resource allocations. He doesn't demand forced requisition from slaves. Rather, he utilizes free individuals motivated by structured grace to build a space for a communicative, living God. The very structural materials of this project brilliantly illustrate this. We're talking about fine linen, woven with highly valuable blue, purple, and scarlet yarns, sturdy acacia wood, entirely overlaid with gold, and firmly seated in heavy silver bases. These materials and this highly specific mobile architecture echo a temporary encampment culture. It was engineered specifically for transit. It was designed from the ground up so the God of Sinai could continuously dwell in the very midst of a migrating populace on their dangerous, winding journey to a promised territory. Let us now turn our attention to the biblical narrative. The historical record opens with this formal commission in verse 1. Quoting from the New International Version, it says, "So Bezalel, Aholiab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord has given skill and ability to know how to carry out all the work of constructing the sanctuary are to do the work just as the Lord has commanded." Notice that phrase, just as the Lord has commanded. The credentialed technicians execute their labor strictly according to the centralized authority's mandate. Proximity to a holy God is achieved only by adhering to his centralized parameters, not by improvising unauthorized human efficiencies. God provides the blueprint, he provides the spirit-empowered skill, and the workers provide the obedient execution. So what happens next is truly remarkable. The people act within these new parameters and bring material morning after morning. Notice the administrative halt required here in verse 5. The foremen actually have to leave their workstations to inform Moses that capacity has been exceeded. They say, the people are bringing more than enough. Imagine a church-building campaign today where the pastor literally has to beg the congregation to stop giving. The logistical scarcity of the harsh wilderness is entirely overwhelmed by structured provision, to the point where Moses has to dispatch a formal notice to restrain the giving. Let's look at how the fabrication proceeds. It's built sequentially from the inside out, from the most holy to the most durable. Step 1. Specialized personnel weave the restricted, divinely viewed inner linen curtains. Step 2. A continuous, weather-resistant exterior barrier of goat hair is added. Step 3 places an overlay of red dyed ram skins. And finally, Step 4 provides a protective layer of durable exterior leather. This layered approach visually indicates a dedicated, holy internal function, protected by robust external environmental endurance. Next, the structural framing is erected. And the text uses deliberate procedural verbs to emphasize the exactitude of the framing. We see upright acacia boards standing 10 cubits high, milled with dual tenons and seated firmly in heavy silver bases. A continuous central crossbar runs like a trunk from end to end. Why such precise millimeter-level engineering? Because his holy nature demands absolute perfection and order. This exactitude ensures the mobile headquarters functions as one incredibly stable consolidated unit. Attention then shifts to the threshold protocols in verse 35. They made the curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely twisted linen, with cherubim woven into it by a skilled worker. The craftsmen manufacture a beautifully woven internal partition. This veil, suspended on gold-overlaid columns, strictly regulates access to the most holy place in the covenant seal. It teaches the populace a vital lesson. Proximity to the sovereign presence of God is a factual reality, but it is strictly regulated to protect sinful man from consuming holiness. Let us examine the theological significance. Looking through the lens of systematic theology, we uncover incredible depth here. First, consider our harmatology, the study of sin. Just a few chapters earlier, we saw the tragic misdirection of communal resources to construct the unauthorized blasphemous golden calf. But here we see soteriology, the study of salvation and grace in beautiful action. The sanctioned application of gold for the tabernacle actually corrects that prior sin. Grace literally reallocates those communal resources away from unauthorized idolatry, redirecting them toward authorized, holy worship. Observe the fascinating typological shift regarding the cherubim. Recall the historical fulfillment in Genesis. Cherubim with flaming swords were stationed as terrifying sentinels to enforce restricted access to Eden. But look at the prophetic fulfillment unfolding here in the tabernacle's textiles. These beautifully woven cherubim no longer represent total, absolute restriction. Instead, they designate a regulated, structured corridor where dedicated petitions and sacrifices can be processed by an appointed mediator. This brings us directly to our Christology. This heavy veil institutes strict boundary protocols for the earthly chief priest, who could only transit this partition annually and never without blood. However, this perfectly prefigures the definitive historical juncture when our primary mediator, Jesus Christ, tears the veil through his ultimate sacrifice. Exodus 36 establishes the framework, conditioning the community to anticipate the glorious day when that active corridor of continuous proximity would be opened permanently. Now, as careful students, we must consistently maintain a strict theological distinction between God's program for national Israel and his program for the church. For physical national Israel, God utilized a literal mobile headquarters, physical structures, and regional geography to govern their logistics under the law. But for the church today under grace, God employs a radically different administrative model. He orchestrates internal realignment through the residency of the Holy Spirit, embedding his directives internally. These are distinct programmatic eras, though they beautifully echo one another's principles. We see this echo clearly in our ecclesiology. In the tabernacle, we see distinct curtain modules securely linked by gold clasps to function as one centralized facility. This structural integration serves as an ecclesiological precursor. It subtly conditioned the early community to anticipate a future administration, the church, that would eventually take highly diverse demographic groups and intimately integrate them by the Holy Spirit into one unified administrative body. Let us examine the spiritual lessons and application. The modern student can draw profound practical wisdom here. First, we must learn to let administrative provision determine our operational budgets. Trust the Creator to supply the resources for the work He actually commands. Second, view technical precision in unseen labor as a strict metric of faithful compliance. Just like those ancient craftsmen perfecting hidden wooden boards, we must work with integrity even when no human eye sees us. Third, maintain procedural respect in our corporate gatherings. And finally, request divine governance of your daily itineraries. Just as the cloud moved the tabernacle, we must allow the Holy Spirit to guide our daily transit. Let us examine our conclusion. The tabernacle's highly engineered architecture vividly communicates systemic unity, maintains regulated proximity, and establishes incredibly secure administrative boundaries. Ultimately, the repetitive compliance metric of building just as the Lord commanded establishes a rhythm of reliability. It prepares the community for the scheduled historical event that will follow in Exodus 40, the visible confirmation of God's heavy glory filling the completed tabernacle. Obedient preparation always precedes the resting presence of God. We close with this incredible record from verses 6 and 7 from the NIV. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary, and so the people were restrained from bringing more, because what they already had was more than enough to do all the work. The weight of this is astounding. Are we willing to build strictly according to his blueprint? Student, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May you rest in the absolute sufficiency of his centralized provision and the profound depths of his structured grace.
For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woody-broom.online.